Welcome, dwellers of the dark. We are a channel honoring the yellowed and blackened bones of many prominent authors. We will be digging up several obscure, strange, and forgotten authors who influenced many of the great horror, science fiction, and fantasy writers today. Comment below if you like. If you have authors that you'd like to see recognized, list them in the comments or contact our author page. Authors, always looking for fresh blood. Subscribe and contact us for more information. Subscribe for more tales of the horrifying, obscure, strange, and forgotten. We'll have quite a collection climbing out of the tombs. If you like any of our tales, crush or cut the like button below. Check out our other stories on YouTube and our websites. YouTube, Dweller of the Dark. Official website, dwellerofthedark.com. You can find us on Facebook, Jeffrey LeBlanc, horror writer. Check out our books on Amazon. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and Bandcamp. Children of horror. Tonight, we celebrate the magic, the mystery, and the mayhem of Halloween with a collection of hauntingly beautiful and terrifying poems. These are sure to conjure up the ghosts of Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Harry Benton. Enjoy. Nemesis by H.P. Lovecraft. Through the ghoul-guarded gateways of slumber, past the wan-moon'd abysses of night, I have lived over my lives without number. I have sounded all things with my sight, and I struggle and shriek ere the daybreak, being driven to madness with fright. I have whirled with the earth at the dawning, when the sky was a vaporous flame. I have seen the dark universe yawning, where the planets roll without aim, where they roll in their horror unheeded, without knowledge or luster or name. I drifted o'er seas without ending, under sinister great clouded skies, that the many-forked lightning is rending, that resound with hysterical cries, with the moans of invisible demons that out of the green waters rise. I have plunged like a deer through the arches of the hoary primordial grove, where the oak feel the presence that marches and stalks on where no spirit dares rove. And I flee from a thing that surrounds me and leers through dead branches above. I have stumbled by cave-ridden mountains that rise barren and bleak from the plain. I have drunk of the fog-fetid fountains that ooze down to the marsh and the main. And in hot cursed torrents I have seen things I care not to gaze on again. I have scanned the vast ivy-clad palace. I have trod its untenanted hall, where the moon, writhing up from the valleys, shews the tapestry thing on the wall, strange figures discordantly woven, which I cannot endure to recall. I have peered from the casement in wonder at the moldering meadows around, at the many-roofed village laid under the curse of a grave-girdled ground. And from rows of white urn-carven marble, I listened intently for sound. I have haunted the tombs of the ages. I have flown on the pinions of fear, where the smoke-belching Erebus rages, where the jackals loom snow-clad and drear, and in realms where the sun of the desert consumes what it never can cheer. I was old when the pharaohs first mounted the jewel-decked throne by the Nile. I was old in those epochs uncounted, when I, and I only, was vile, and man, yet untainted and happy, dwelt in bliss on the far Arctic isle. Oh, great was the sin of my spirit, and great is the reach of its doom. Not the pity of heaven can cheer it, nor can respite be found in the tomb. Down the infinite eons come beating the wings of unmerciful gloom. Through the ghoul-guarded gateways of slumber, past the wan-moon'd abysses of night, I have lived O'er my lives without number, I have sounded all things with my sight, and I struggle and shriek ere the daybreak, being driven to madness with fright. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." Then I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisant made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but, with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door. Perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crust be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's plutonium shore?" Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by replies so aptly spoken, Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking with this ominous bird of yore, with this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, think of evil. Prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm of Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distance Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. The Song of the Bats by Robert E. Howard. The dusk was on the mountain, and the stars were dim and frail, when the bats came flying from the river and the vale, to wheel against the twilight and sing their witchy tale. We were kings of old, they chanted, rulers of a world enchanted. Every nation of creation owned our lordship over men. Diadems of power crowned us. Then rose Solomon to confound us. In the form of beast, he bound us. So our rule was broken then. Whirling, wheeling into westward, fled they in their phantom flight. Was it but a winged beat music, murmured through the star-gemmed night? Or the singing of a ghost clan, whispering of forgotten might? The Owl by Geoffrey LeBlanc. Once long ago, as midnight was creeping, I contemplating, powerless, half sleeping, falling upon ominous trail of most obscure and dismal accord. Drifting, practically drowsing, unexpectedly, there came a rousing. Above misted cypress limb, a cackling at my cold shore. It is wind most foul, I whispered, rustling this tree with its howl. Nothing, of course, to fear, I implore. Dreadfully I recall, with disdain distemper, the cold, misted December. Setting furnace to flame burned away death's chill, illuminating ghastly ember. Anticipating heavenly lights of angels, in vanity I raged in hellish angst and anguish, forgotten never my sorrow for the cold Katina of the distant shore. Rarest of the rare, my love, whom all manner of spectre wish to covet thereof, without body, without soul, at darkened eternity's door. Shimmering with sadness, speculative manifestations of madness, with each shadow on the bough, filled me with exhilaration, palpable dread that crevassed never before. Thunderous my heart took to beating, that in vain I chanted, practically bleeding. It is wind most foul, twisting, screeching, ever to howl. Possibly some wayward creature in refuge above my watered shore. A benign, small person may be finding shelter from this chilled, watered shore. Currently, my phantom caught fire. No hesitation, I inquired. Anyone? Was my retort. Heartfully lay away my concerns with report. Apologies for intrusion, as storm has created our dark collusion and brought your rustle. And so vainly my attempt to warm my predicament, you tussled this tree of lore. Focused the flame in my shame. I not heard you. A raised torch to red tree of lore. Blankets of moss, shadows, and nothing more. Misted darkness I peered with fear foreboding. Eternity counted minutes of my loathing. Skeptic say I, mortally entranced to sorcerer's dreams of strange eons of forgotten yore. Swaying, creaking, broken silence with nature speaking. But there lay between stillness speaking. No longer lay I in jest, as in earnest I whispered a spectral test. Katina? Again I whispered, shuddered by echoed screams that break silence best. Katina! A simple scream and nothing more. Drawing closer to the fire burning, something wretched in me churning and burning my soul, when a louder tussle overhead left me with little dread. Certainly, I spoke, certainly this tussle, this rustle is something just above my head. I endeavor to discover, to see with blinded cover, through misted corridors. Paused in most curious reflection of this mysterious detection I must explore. Surely screech of wind, and nothing more. Torch pushed up in diligence, then we saw in mist piercing fiery eyes of penance, in stooped and turned low, a wise owl of the Arthurian age, misted Avalon, peering below. Stately, stoic, may be said of thee, wisest of the wise may he be. However, creature of genteel grace, or queen of ancient place, perched above my swamp shore, perched upon great Pan's limbs, just above my swamp shore, perched, twisted head, and stared, as the dead, to distant Stygian moors. Silver strigiform had sought to frighten, but in my disposition my heart he had lightened. Eyes befitting a witch's cat, and the strange eons of the familiar bat of yore. Wisdom and strategy you hearken to Athena's Acropolis did you embark from, I jest. Why such tempered scowl, gathering ghostly apparition called owl, haunting with Hestia, hunting with Hades in forests most foul? Give me your name, bird of Minerva, with sharpened talons on this nightmarish shore. Cackled the owl, Katina, cross shore. Wondrous, dark marvel was I sent from this verbal precedence, confused with this avian interpretation, dismissed mimicry, Abhorred consternation. We must consider this, that in human spirit we would be remiss to believe we were ever graced first in line with this fowl of midnight kissed. Nocturnal bird or nightmarish beast cloaked in darkness unseen. Katina! I heard again the owl scream. However, the owl, shrouded on his oaken throne, cackled defiantly, a single word, his hint of soul from that cold gaze, with those eyes of fire and ablaze. Silence cloaked, I began to stutter, though not a feather did he flutter. With revered whisper I muttered, cackle and leave this shore. As the day's light be upon us, depart as my joy leaves this shore. Tommy the owl cackled, Katina evermore. Aghast at our silence disturbed with cacophony by this bird. Indubitably this is folly, grimaced I. It's cackled, wasted and worn. Prisoner it once must be to unrepentant master lost on land or sea. Ancient mariner on ghostly wings, cursed every midnight to sing on cold shore. Eternity, his boundless plight, to crush all joy in its cackling delight on cold shore. Oh, his maniacal cackle, ever, evermore. However, the owl whilst hovered, happily brought grin I discovered. My velvet jacket I placed beneath his tree of red, shrouded in mossy thread. Forward I sat transfixed in grace, pondering this creature's place. Universe after universe, grasping, linking what this fiend was thinking, dreaming, clasping. What this abhorred, abominable, aberrant, appalling, hallowed harbinger of ominous yore, inferred screeching, Katina on that icy shore. Assumption, deduction I made in guessing, no word for expressing. Toward the feathered phantom whose flamed eyes smoldered forevermore, pontificating divinely as crashed lightning, my drenched head never drying, shivering on the jacket's velvet lining, that fire raged to open storm, on whose emerald velvet lining cast flickered shadow as fire raged to open storm. Ah, my love warms nevermore. On I deduced this sulphur fragrant fog profused from dimensions unseen, carried by carrion race, winding and weaving the canopy and swamp place. Devil of darkness, I exclaimed, thy Nemesis commanded forth, ravaging banshee sent forth. Repose, repose and anesthetize my mind, my eyes from memories of Katina at death's door. Drink, please drink this merciful anesthetic and forget the memory of cold Katina at death's door. Cackled the owl, Katina from cold shore. Nemesis, I roared, vilest villain of vaporous flame, Nemesis eternal thy name. Were you legion sent or legionnaire lost, trekking this dismal dark shore? Desert wandered who even Pharaoh called foe, in his fiery lands long before Poe. Now ghoul-guarded by despair, imbibed, I beg of thee, say her name once more. Commence the cacophony, cure of my ills, begging of thee, say her name once more. Cackled the owl, Katina, across the cold shore. Nemesis, I roared, vilest villain of vaporous flame, Nemesis eternal thy name, vainest wretch that heaven cast down from above by that God we both loved. Mercy on such a sorrowful soul, a heart devoid life, blackest hole. Grasping, clasping with divination, hallowed angel Katina waved this cold shore. Grasped the affectionate and ardent angel Katina away from this cold shore. Cackled the owl, Katina across dead shore. Inconsiderate word, fiend are foul. Our dark collusion ends, owl. I screeched in resolution. Storms of Apollo strike thee back to Hellion Hollow and Mount Olympus's shore. Silver Strigiform, take every gilded feather as tribute to thy deceit in this weather. Silver Strigiform, away from my sorrowed shore. Begone the red tree of lore. Rip thy razor talons from my broken heart and take flight to another deathly moor. Cackled the owl, Katina, across the icy shore. and freezing. The owl never leaving, still as staring, perched upon great Pan's limbs, just above my swamp shore. Perched, twisted head, and stares as the dead to distant Stygian moors. His Erebus eyes become gilded fireflies, flickering the flames, seething, possibly dreaming, whilst leprous moon overhead wakes the forgotten dead in shadows before. And as I lie waiting, my flickering shadow, anticipating those ghostly shadows before, cackles the owl, Fatina, evermore. Halloween by Harry Ben. Tonight is the night when dead leaves fly like witches on switches across the sky, when elf and sprite flit through the night on a moony sheen. Tonight is the night when leaves make a sound like a gnome in his home under the ground, when spooks and trolls creep out of holes, mossy and green. Tonight is the night when pumpkins stare through sheaves and leaves everywhere, when ghouls and ghosts and goblin hosts dance round their queen. It's Halloween. Thank you for listening. Have a happy Halloween.